Luther Hayes stood in his father's marble-floored mansion in Beverly Hills, phone in hand, laughing with his friends. He was 38 years old, handsome in the way money makes possible, and completely bored with his life. Nothing felt real anymore. Not the women who wanted him for his last name. Not the friends who never challenged him. Not even his own reflection. So he did what bored rich men do. He looked for entertainment in cruelty. "I'm actually going to do it," he said, finger hovering over the send button. His friend Derek leaned over his shoulder. "Dude, that's savage. Your dad's Maid? At your birthday party?" Luther grinned, ignoring the small voice in his head that said this was wrong. He'd been ignoring that voice for years. Imagine her face when she walks into a room full of billionaires. He pressed send. The invitation went to Maya Rivers, the 33-year-old woman who'd cleaned his family's home for 3 years. A single mother with an 8-year-old daughter. The woman whose name he sometimes forgot. The woman he was about to humiliate in front of 200 of Los Angeles's wealthiest people. What Luther didn't know was that Maya had her own secrets. Her own flaws. Her own reasons for saying yes to an invitation that was clearly designed to destroy her. And when she walked through those doors in 7 days, both of their carefully constructed worlds would shatter. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all started. If you're already hooked, do me a favor, hit that like button right now and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, this story goes places you won't expect. Now, let's continue. Maya Rivers wiped down the granite countertop in the Hayes family's kitchen, her movements automatic. She'd been doing this job for 3 years, and if she was honest, she'd stopped really seeing the houses she cleaned. They all blurred together. Other people's homes. Other people's lives. She checked her phone. 2 missed calls from Zoe's school. Her stomach dropped. That was the 3rd time this month. Zoe had been acting out lately. Fighting with other kids. Talking back to teachers. Maya knew why. 8-year-olds felt their mother's exhaustion even when you tried to hide it. They sensed when you were barely holding on. Maya had been barely holding on for months. She heard laughter from the living room and felt that familiar spike of resentment she hated in herself. These people laughed so easily. Like the world was designed for their amusement. Maya. She turned to see Luther Hayes, 38, but acting like he was still in college. In 3 years, he'd never once asked her a real question. Never asked if she had family. Never asked her name without checking the roster first. And she'd let him. Because asking meant being seen, and being seen meant being vulnerable, and Maya had learned to avoid vulnerability like it was poison. "Yes, Mr. Hayes?" Luther smiled, that smile she'd seen before. The one that meant he was about to do something he thought was clever. "My birthday party is next Saturday. At the Rosewood Estate in Bel Air. Black tie event. 200 guests." Maya nodded, already calculating whether she could pick up an extra shift that night. "You're invited," Luther said. The words took a moment to register. When they did, Maya felt something ugly rise in her chest. Not hurt. Anger. She was so tired of being the punchline to rich people's jokes. "That's very kind, Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice flat. "But I don't think that's appropriate." "Oh, come on," Luther interrupted. "I'm sending you the official invitation right now. What's your email?" Maya should have said no. Should have kept her dignity intact. Should have walked away. But she didn't. Because Maya had her own demons, her own pride. And part of her, the part she wasn't proud of, wanted to see what would happen. Wanted to prove something. Wanted to stop being invisible for one night, even if it meant walking into a trap. She gave him her email address. Luther sent the invitation, his friends laughing behind him. Saturday, 8 p.m. Dress code is black tie. After they left, Maya stared at her phone. She should delete it. Should forget this ever happened. Instead, she pressed RSVP and typed, attending. Not because she was strong, but because she was tired of being weak. That evening, Luther sat with his friends at an expensive restaurant, half listening to their conversation. He was thinking about Maya's face when she'd given him her email. There'd been something in her eyes. Not fear. Something sharper. "She's really coming?" Derek asked. Luther checked his phone. Yeah, she RSVP'd. Brandon laughed. This is going to be legendary. Luther smiled, but it felt hollow. Everything felt hollow lately. He was 38 years old, sitting in his father's shadow, living off his family's name, dating women who bored him, surrounded by friends who never told him the truth. He'd invited Maya as a joke because jokes were easier than admitting his life felt meaningless. To Saturday, Derek said, raising his glass. Luther clinked glasses and felt nothing. Meanwhile, Maya sat in her small apartment, watching Zoe pretend to do homework while actually drawing in the margins of her notebook. Her daughter had her father's eyes. Maya tried not to hold that against her. Mommy has to go somewhere next Saturday, Maya said. Grandma will watch you. Where? Zoe asked, not looking up. A party. Will there be cake? Maya smiled despite herself. Probably very expensive cake. Can I come? Not this time, baby. Zoe finally looked up. You never take me anywhere fun. The words hit harder than they should have. Because they were true. Maya worked constantly. When she wasn't working, she was too tired to be the mother she wanted to be. Too tired to be patient. Too tired to be present. I'm sorry, Maya said quietly. Zoe shrugged and went back to her drawing. 8 years old and already learning to expect disappointment. Maya walked to her bedroom and pulled out a garment bag from the back of her closet. Inside was a dress from another life. A life where she'd been Maya Sinclair, opera singer. A life where she'd performed at the Met and believed she was destined for greatness. That was before she'd gotten pregnant at 25. Before the father had left. Before she'd had to choose between her career and survival. She'd chosen survival. But she'd never forgiven herself for it. Never forgiven herself for not being strong enough to do both. Never forgiven herself for resenting, even for a moment, the daughter she loved more than anything. Maya was good at hiding her resentment. But it was there, a quiet poison she carried. The knowledge that she'd given up everything and somehow it still wasn't enough. She looked at the dress and made a decision. If Luther Hayes wanted to humiliate her, she'd let him try. But she wouldn't make it easy. The next 7 days passed in a blur. Maya kept working, kept pretending everything was fine. But at night, after Zoe was asleep, she practiced. Scales first, then songs. Her voice was rusty, uncertain. But it was still there. On Tuesday, she called her old voice coach, Professor Eleanor Chin. Maya Sinclair, Eleanor said, surprise in her voice. It's been almost 9 years. I need help, Maya said. I need to remember how to sing. Why now? Maya hesitated. Because I'm tired of being invisible. And I'm not sure that's a good enough reason, but it's the only one I have. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Come see me tomorrow. They spent 3 hours together. Eleanor didn't ask questions about where Maya had been or why she'd stopped singing. She just listened and corrected and reminded Maya of who she used to be. You're angrier than you used to be, Eleanor observed. I have more to be angry about, Maya replied. Good, Eleanor said. Use it. On Friday, Maya used money she couldn't afford to get her hair and makeup done. Money that should have gone to Zoe's field trip or next month's electric bill. She felt guilty about it. But she did it anyway. Because sometimes you had to choose yourself, even when it felt selfish. Even when it probably was selfish. Saturday evening arrived too quickly and not quickly enough. Maya dropped Zoe at her mother's house. Her daughter hugged her goodbye without really looking at her, already absorbed in her tablet. Maya felt that familiar ache of inadequacy. You look beautiful, her mother said. I look desperate, Maya corrected. Sometimes they're the same thing, her mother replied. Maya drove to the Rosewood estate in a borrowed car, hands shaking slightly. Not from nerves. From anger. At Luther for his cruelty. At herself for accepting his invitation. At life for being so much harder than she'd expected. When she stepped out of the car in that midnight blue gown, she looked exactly like what she was. A woman who'd survived, but not without scars. A woman who was beautiful but also bitter. A woman who'd once had dreams and now had regrets. She looked real. Conversations near the entrance died as she walked up the steps. Not because she looked perfect, but because she looked like she didn't care if they approved. Luther was inside, greeting guests with his parents. He was thinking about how boring his life had become when he saw her. The woman walking toward him made his breath catch. Not because she looked like a fairy tale, but because she looked like she could destroy him and not lose sleep over it. His mind struggled to reconcile this woman with the housekeeper he'd dismissed for 3 years. Maya reached him and smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Good evening, Mr. Hayes. Thank you for the invitation." Luther opened his mouth, but his father spoke first. "I'm sorry, have we met?" James Hayes asked, actually looking at Maya. Really looking at her. "Maya Sinclair," she said, extending her hand. "Your son was kind enough to invite me." Before Luther could respond, someone from the crowd spoke up. "Maya Sinclair? The opera singer." Luther turned to see Harrison Mitchell, philanthropist and board member of the LA Opera, staring at Maya with recognition. "You performed at the Met," Harrison said, walking over. "I saw you in 2016. You were extraordinary. What happened to you?" Maya's smile didn't waver, but Luther saw something flicker in her eyes. "Pain. Life happened. I became a mother. I had to choose. So I chose survival over singing. Not everyone gets to keep their dreams." The words hung heavy in the air. "She's my housekeeper," Luther said, and immediately regretted it. It sounded defensive. Desperate. Maya turned to look at him fully. "Yes. For 3 years, I've cleaned your home. And you've never once asked me about my life. You invited me here as a joke, didn't you? To watch me embarrass myself." Luther felt everyone's eyes on him. "I didn't know." "You didn't know because you didn't want to know," Maya interrupted, her voice sharp. "You didn't know because I was convenient to ignore. Just another struggling single mother cleaning up your mess." She looked around at the crowd. "But I didn't come here to make you feel guilty, Luther. I came because I wanted to remember what it felt like to be seen. Even if the reason for being seen was cruelty. Even if I'm being selfish. Even if this makes me just as flawed as you." The honesty of it struck Luther like a physical blow. Harrison stepped forward. "Maya, would you sing tonight? Please. We have a piano in the conservatory." Maya hesitated. She thought about Zoe waiting at home. About the bills on her counter. About all the practical reasons to say no. But she was so tired of practical. "Yes," she said. "Are you loving this story? Don't forget to share this with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that share button right now. Let's continue because this is about to get even more intense." They moved to the conservatory. 200 people crammed in, phones out. Maya stood by the piano, and for a moment, she let herself feel everything. The resentment. The exhaustion. The anger at a life that had never been what she'd planned. Then she sang. She sang Vici d'Arte, and she didn't sing it beautifully. She sang it honestly. With all the roughness of someone who'd had to give up everything. With all the bitterness of someone who'd made the right choice and still felt robbed. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. People didn't just applaud when she finished. They wept. Because perfection is forgettable. But truth cuts straight to the bone. Luther stood at the back, watching this woman he'd dismissed, and felt something crack open inside him. Not love. Not yet. But recognition. The recognition that he'd spent his whole life being empty while she'd spent hers being too full. After the performance, Luther found Maya on the terrace. "I need to apologize," he said. Maya turned. "You think an apology fixes this?" "No," Luther admitted. "But I need to say it anyway. What I did was cruel. And pointless. And I did it because my life is so empty that hurting someone else felt like feeling something." Maya studied him. "That's the most honest thing you've ever said to me." "I know," Luther said. "And I don't know what to do with that." "Neither do I," Maya replied. They stood in silence, two flawed people looking at each other clearly for the first time. "Can I ask you something?" Luther said. "Why did you come? You knew it was a trap." Maya smiled bitterly. "Because I wanted to feel important for one night. Even if it meant humiliating myself. Even if it was selfish. I chose myself over my daughter's field trip money. Over being smart. Over being good." She looked at him. "So we're both terrible people, Luther. Just in different ways." Luther felt something shift. Not attraction exactly. But connection. The kind that comes from recognizing your own brokenness in someone else. "Maya," he said softly. She looked at him, and for a moment, there was possibility in the air between them. Dangerous, complicated possibility. Then both their phones buzzed. And Maya's face went pale. "It's my mother," she whispered, reading the text. "Something's wrong with Zoe." Luther didn't hesitate. "My car." Now. They ran together, the party forgotten, two imperfect people racing toward the only thing that mattered. And as they sped through Los Angeles streets, Luther realized he'd never felt more alive than in this moment. Rushing toward someone else's emergency. Finally feeling like his actions had consequences. Finally feeling real. If this story moved you, hit that like button right now. Share it. Subscribe because part 2 is coming and you will not believe what happens next. Drop a comment and tell me what you think happened to Zoe. Remember, we're all flawed. We're all struggling. And sometimes that's exactly what connects us. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, stay humble, stay real, and never stop trying to be better than you were yesterday.